Welcome to the Midwest Electric 88th Annual Meeting of the Members, and thank you for participating in your electric cooperative. This might be a record, or at least a recent time record. We are a little over 1,000 RSVPs for the event here. So thank you. That's awesome. That's a great show of member engagement. At least going back the last 20 years, that's the record. So before we get started, though, I'd like to make a few introductions, starting with your board of directors. We'll go down the aisle here. Larry Vandemark, Roger Rank, Gary Knapke, your board secretary treasurer Kathy Brake, board president Jim Wiekert, Adam Johnson is our attorney, Randy Heinel, vice president, Steve Bauer, and Ann Selhorst. And we've got a couple of employees in the audience. Kevin Schmidt, manager of finance and member service, and Julie Marshall, our manager of administrative services. I think that's it, who's in here for now. Okay. And our special guest today is Craig Grooms. He's CEO of Buckeye Power and Ohio's electric cooperatives. He'll be one of our main speakers here coming up in a little bit. And I am Matt Berry, your CEO, so welcome. And now Jim Wiekert, board president.
Good evening. I call to order this 88th annual meeting of Midwest Electric Incorporated. The Credentials Committee report that over 100 members are present in person or by ballot. Therefore, we have a quorum. At this time, I'd like to invite fellow director Roger Rank to give the invocation.
Will you bow your heads with me? Our dear Heavenly Father, we just praise you once again for this opportunity together as a co-op. We thank you, Lord, for our members. We thank you, Lord, for our board of directors. We thank you for our employees. And we just pray to Lord, you be with our employees because they're the ones that are out in the field on the 20-degree below nights to come out and bring us electricity. And we just pray you would keep them all safe when these things happen. We just praise you for them and thank you for them. We thank you, dear Lord, for the country that we live in. It's the greatest country in the world. Yes, there are problems. There are things that need to be resolved, but we need your direction for those things, oh Lord, and we just ask that you would be there for us, that we would humble ourselves and we would seek your guidance. Just pray be with this meeting tonight. Help us to have a good time. Thank you for the food that was prepared for us. We just pray that you would bless this meeting and send us home safely. In Jesus' name, amen.
Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag's right over here. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. Thank you. The minutes of the 2024 meeting were distributed in your handout bag. Are there any objections or corrections to these minutes? If not, may we have a motion to approve the minutes as written? I see a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passed. Thank you. Next, we'll go to the board report. Members of our cooperative, it's great to see you all here. And thank you for attending our annual meeting of members. My name is Jim Wiekert. I am your board president. We hope you've enjoyed good fellowship with your cooperative friends, neighbors, and family. It's also our hope you enjoyed a good supper, and that was part of our meeting, and we also welcome members who happen to be viewing online. I want to begin these thoughts from your board by providing some details about 2024 Midwest Electric highlights. We now have 11,200 consumer members. Our membership continues to grow at a moderate pace. Our total utility plant assets grew to $73.9 million and a 3% increase from 2023. Much of the increase in utility plant in recent years is due to our investments in SCADA and distribution automation, which helps us to keep the lights on more readily for you. Last year, we paid back to our members $1.2 million in patronage cash back. Since 1955, Midwest Electric has returned more than $44 million in patronage capital cash back to our members. We now have 1,547 miles of distribution lines that we maintain. Right-of-way clearing is performed annually to help reduce tree-related outages. Tree trimming took place along 309 miles of lines in the Jonestown, Rockford, Spencerville, and Macedon service areas. We tested and treated 1,566 poles in the St. Henry area. Poles that are rejected will be replaced with new poles. Of course, all these metrics and infrastructure assets are important to completing our mission, but our human resources will make or break our success. I want to take this moment to consider and appreciate their efforts, from our CEO and his leadership team to every employee of our cooperative. A big thank you. At the board level, we strive to represent and understand our membership needs. Our cooperative, compared to other cooperatives, is very aggressive in returning patronage capital. All the items I mentioned above are part of the cooperative business model. We need membership funds to improve our system, but when we are able to return some of those funds, we relish the ability to do this. We are thankful to have an active and engaged political action program. Over the long term, the political pendulum and public policy can shift back and forth. For our cooperative to have a voice in the process, we need you, our members, to support this. To those of you who are part of our political action efforts, many thanks. To those of you who have thought about it but never acted upon it, today is the day, and I urge you to sign up for this simple program. Our entire board is very actively involved and dedicated to this program, and it benefits our membership by making our voice heard in the legislative process. Several final notes. The Political Action Group and our Member Engagement Group are both great ways to be a more active part of our cooperative. But pursuing and running for a board position is an even greater way to be a more active participant in this great endeavor. Keep this in mind as we move forward. In concert with employees, later this year, our board will be going through the process of creating the next 3-year strategic plan. This plan will chart the course for the main strategic goals and objectives of our cooperative for the later half of this decade. We are an imperfect entity, but always striving to improve. So as we start to create our new 3-year strategic plan, we ask you, our members, 3 main questions. Number 1, what do you think Midwest Electric should start doing? Number 2, what do you think Midwest Electric should stop doing? And then number 3, what do you think Midwest Electric should keep doing? Thus, the board appreciates your thoughts on this. It's our goal to make the best plan possible for our cooperative. This board here is simply a group of members just like you that seek to guide the best course for our cooperative. A thank you to all of our board members here for their efforts and support, and again for putting up with me as their president. At this time, please join me in welcoming Craig Grooms, President and CEO of Buckeye Power Supply Cooperative.
Thanks, Jim. All right, appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm always impressed coming up here by the turnout and this wonderful facility, so I appreciate hearing all about the support that you have for your distribution co-op. It's very much impressive, and I think this operation is probably one of the best that we have in the state of Ohio, so thank you. I'm going to give you an overview of what we're doing at the statewide and Buckeye Power, your generation and transmission provider. So this first screen is probably one that you've seen several times. It's just a summary of collectively the electric co-ops in Ohio and some of the key statistics. So again, there are 25 cooperatives, 24 are headquartered in Ohio, but there's a 25th headquartered in Michigan that serves a bit of Williams and Fulton County. All of those co-ops collectively serve about 400,000 members, about 1 million residents of Ohio. And our peak load, so when we measure our peak demand for electricity, if you think back to Christmas Eve of 2022, I think they called it Winter Storm Elliott, we hit our all-time peak record load of just over 1,900 megawatts on the Friday before Christmas in 2022. To give you an understanding of how that relates to the state of Ohio, Ohio has a peak demand of about 30,000 megawatts. So the cooperative load in Ohio is about between 6 and 7% of the total state. Serving that demand, our generation resources, our Cardinal plant, which is 3 coal units in eastern Ohio, is sort of our flagship resource. We also own 18% of the OVEC Corporation, which is 2 power plants, one in southeast Ohio, one in southeast Indiana. And then we have 2 natural gas plants, the Moan plant up west of Van Wert and the Greenville natural gas plant down near Greenville, Ohio. Both of those gas plants have backup fuel oil capability. Oftentimes when we get into very cold weather, natural gas sometimes is not available on the pipeline, so we have the ability to burn on-site fuel oil to make sure those units are ready and available when needed. And then we also have a small bit of renewables. Primarily that's from the hydroelectric power that we receive from New York. So if you've been to Niagara Falls, they have a very large hydroelectric facility on the U.S. side. They have one on the Canadian side. On the U.S. side, that power goes throughout New England, the Northeast, down into Pennsylvania, into Ohio, and you all actually get a share of those hydroelectric facilities. So a little bit closer look at our generation resources. We talked about, if you start on the left-hand side, our Moan plant up in northwest Ohio, our Greenville plant near Greenville, the Clifty Creek, the OVEC unit down in southeast Indiana. The hydro facilities, we call it NYPA, New York Power Authority. They operate the hydroelectric facilities in New York that we receive an entitlement from. Our Cardinal plant that hopefully you've heard about and have heard about what the expectation is for the Cardinal plant. To remind you, you all now own all 3 units at the Cardinal plant. So there are 3 600 megawatt units at Cardinal. Unit 1 output goes to AEP under a power purchase agreement, and then the output of units 2 and 3 serve cooperative load in Ohio. You probably have heard of the arrangement that AEP made. They wanted to step out of generation in Ohio, and so that's why we bought Unit 1 from AEP. The plan is, because of decisions AEP made, is to shut down Unit 3 at the end of 2028 due to some EPA rules that they chose not to comply with, and because of an agreement they signed with an organization. It doesn't do anything to cooperative members in Ohio. We essentially will step from Unit 3 into Unit 1 that they are walking away from. And so in terms of output, capacity, demand, no harm to electric co-op members. But in the meantime, we're exploring ways, working with the Trump administration, some other organizations, trying to find a way is to keep Unit 3 online. It's still a perfectly good resource. We were, I think, unhappy with what AEP did when they were owning Unit 1, but it really was outside of our control. But we are actively exploring ways to keep that unit online if it doesn't harm co-op members in Ohio economically. So just wanted to let you know, I know we've been talking a lot about Unit 3 shutting down at the end of 2028. We are actively exploring ways. It's really complicated right now. We have EPA rules to deal with. We have a bilateral agreement that AEP signed that we would have to deal with. So it's complicated, but we're exploring if there are possible ways to keep that unit online. I think it's good for the state. I think it's good for the power grid overall. We just want to make sure we can do it in a way that it doesn't harm co-op members in Ohio. This is just an FYI. I've added this to the slide deck that I've been talking about this year. This is just for your information. What are the largest co-op loads in Ohio? No surprise, the Honda facilities are very large. And it's interesting that if you look at the top 7 largest co-op loads, it's about 10% of the total Ohio cooperative load. So if we have a peak load of 1,900 megawatts, these 7 consumers, these 7 co-op members consume about 190 megawatts collectively. So we have the Honda facilities, we have the Blue Racer natural gas processing plant, and up in Northeast Ohio, we have a large nursery. So really no additional information, just wanted to let you know where and who were the largest co-op members in the state. So speaking of large loads, economic development, times are pretty good in co-op world in Ohio. Not universally across the state. We still have a few challenges, particularly in southern Ohio where it's not growing a lot. But we are seeing some significant load growth expectations going out over the next 5 years. The first one in the top left, that's a Cologix data center. So we are signed on to serve what I'll call a smaller data center, starting up in a couple years. That'll be served by Licking Rural, or the Energy Co-op, headquartered in Newark, Ohio, in Licking County. The top right, South Central will be serving this large manufacturer. It's called Anduril. If you get a chance to look that up, it's very interesting. It's Anduril. They are a modern, I'd say, warfare weaponry manufacturer. We've been hearing recently about, what's been going on in Ukraine and Russia, a lot of the drone activity. When you think about what's happening there, this company is essentially on the forefront, the leading edge of what modern weaponry might look like. So it's very interesting down near the Rickenbacker area. They selected a site that will be served by South Central Power, one of our larger co-ops. Bottom left, we talked about the Honda facilities. They made a commitment to build their 2 EV models in Marysville. So I think that's just recognition that they enjoy being a co-op member and they're making investments in Ohio. And then the bottom right, we're seeing residential growth sparsely or sporadically across the state in certain areas, but I think that is overall a good, positive outcome for many of our co-ops. So we're not just a power supplier for electric co-op members in Ohio. We also are a statewide organization. We provide a number of services. And one of the key things we do is help ensure that we are preparing the next group of leaders for co-op members across the state. So we have several programs for co-op employees at different stages of their career, trying to prepare them, trying to support them to make working with electric co-ops a career, not just a job. And so we're preparing for that next generation of leadership, and it's an important service that I think we provide to the co-ops across the state. And additionally, it's not just leadership development. It's really, we talked about what our line workers do for us, right? We recognize we had a small storm today, but we also know what it's like when it's minus 20. We know what it's like when it's 95 degrees and hot outside. We very much appreciate what line workers do for us, and it's one of the reasons why we developed a line worker training program that is one of the best in the country in terms of the instruction and in terms of the facility. And so, again, just want to make sure you're aware of that. I think it's something to be very proud of in Ohio. We have a fantastic facility to make sure we have great instruction, and we're developing that next generation, not just next generation, but current generation of line workers. And mutual aid. So another thing is, there's 25 co-ops serving in Ohio. We have over 900 co-ops across the country. And one of the great benefits of being a community member-owned business is that we establish very strong networks and relationships, not only with our neighboring co-ops, not only with the co-ops in our state, but with the co-ops across the country. And we're able to call on them when we have serious problems. We hope never to go through a serious storm. We have tornadoes, windstorms, ice storms in this part of the country. But as we've heard over the last year, we had some very serious hurricanes. In late April or mid-April, we had some very severe ice storms up in Michigan, and it's nice to be able to call on your fellow co-ops when you're in a time of need. So it's very much appreciated by Ohio co-ops, and I think it's a fantastic arrangement that we have with co-ops pretty much across the country. And if you think about how co-ops were formed back in the 30s and the 40s, part of what we do is a form of charity. It's almost mission work where we're able to go to countries, and I'll be honest, we go to Guatemala, we all recognize, we do, in our ECA, our national organization does projects in Africa. We go into some of these countries, we recognize there's corruption, there's a lot of problems, but if you could do some good, it may not be perfect, it may not be the perfect arrangement, but we do, I think, do some solid work. We provide villages and areas that have gone unserved forever, even though electricity is found in these countries. And so we've done 3 trips to Guatemala. And again, providing electricity really changes the life of some of these villagers. So I think it's a very positive program that we're part of, and I'm proud to be part of that. So this is one slide. We're the power supplier. We provide, several services to the co-ops in Ohio. Legislation, legislative efforts, government affairs has been more of that going on over the last 4 or 5 years than I've ever seen. And since we've had a slew of very severe EPA rules released in 2024, we've ramped up our efforts, most recently with the Trump administration, to get rid of a lot of these rules, which, I'll be honest, they were intended to shut down coal plants and prevent and restrict the amount of natural gas power plants that we have available. And I think, the intention is concerning. I think overall it would really impact our reliability, our affordability, and really impact our overall national economy. So we've seen a number of bright spots over the last, I'll say, 4 to 5 months working with the new administration. But it's going to take time. We've seen some very positive executive orders. I think the signals, the messages that we're hearing are spot on, but we need to work with the agencies, the legislators, to get durable, long-term, permanent solutions to make sure that we can continue operating our facilities now for the next 5 years, for the next 10 to 15 years. State policy, we're very fortunate that we're not regulated by the state of Ohio. The Public Utilities Commission does not regulate co-ops in Ohio. You all, through your boards, regulate our business, and we're very fortunate. But the state of Ohio, outside of the co-ops, deregulated the industry about 25 years ago, and they've recognized that, as I mentioned, our peak load is 30,000 megawatts. We probably have about 24,000 megawatts of generation in Ohio on those coldest or hottest days. And for the balance, we import power from surrounding states. So they recently passed new legislation that they're hoping to spur and provide incentives for more generation. But it remains to be seen if they're going to be successful. And I think it's worth pointing out that we're very fortunate that we're self-governed, we're self-regulated, so when we reach the point when we decide we need more generation, we can make that decision for ourselves. So we're very fortunate in that case. And then in closing, again, resource adequacy has been a big topic over the last couple of years, driven by AI, data center load growth, increased electrification, increased use of electricity, concerned with the new loads, the growth in electricity usage at the same time that we had a slew of regulations released by the prior administration to shut down power plants and prevent new power plants from coming online. And so whenever you make decisions like that, it creates uncertainty, and you can't just flip a light switch and change things. It takes years to unwind things that have been put in place, and we're actively working to turn things around. As I mentioned, federal government. We're working to repeal, rescind several rules that were passed in 2024. Ohio's been busy with energy policy. Fortunately, it really doesn't impact electric co-ops, but since we all are part of the same power grid, we're watching it closely to see how successful it is. But in closing, I think it's important to say, electric co-op members in Ohio, we are in a good place. Our rates are competitive. Buckeye Power provides the generation and the transmission service to co-op members in Ohio, and our rates are the lowest when you compare it against any of the IOUs, the investor-owned utilities across the state. It comes from long-term planning, recognition that nothing worth value is free. So if you want to own and operate power plants, you can't expect to do that on the cheap. We've had a long-term vision over the past few decades to invest in the resources that we need to serve co-op members, and it's paying off now in terms of stable and affordable costs. I think you guys lead with member satisfaction, so you guys are doing it right. Your leadership at Midwest, your board, you as members who help drive the direction of the co-op. So you really are a co-op that other co-ops in Ohio can compare themselves and try to strive to reach the levels that you have. So I think overall the state's in a good place, and you all especially are in a very good place. Member satisfaction, and then just to wrap things up, we talked about some of the services, but everything we do, it starts with safety. For Buckeye Power, operating the plants, it starts with worker safety. With you all, with the co-ops, it starts with line worker safety. Anybody working out in the field, it starts with safety and making sure they have the tools, they have the instruction, they have the knowledge to make sure that they can do a safe job and still provide you with hopefully 100% availability of electricity. So with that, thanks again. Again, I'm very impressed by the co-op here. The facility's great, the turnout, the support for the co-op, very, very nice. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you, Craig, for the power supply update. I'm sure our members will have some questions about power supply when we get to the Q&A session. And thank you again for attending and being an active participant in your electric cooperative, because that's really what this is all about. Well, at last year's annual meeting, I talked about power supply shortages and the potential for blackouts. And I kind of struggled with whether or not to do that, because it's obviously not a fun topic, and it was probably seemed a little dramatic. But nevertheless, I felt it was necessary to share that information, because we all hear about it a lot at the industry meetings that we go to, and being customer owned, I just felt it was our duty to share that information, to pass along that information. And because power generation and transmission takes about 65 cents of every dollar that you send us, I felt, well, it's probably worth a follow-up then to let you know, well, where's it at? How have things changed or advanced since last year? And so let's talk about this past winter. It's been 5 months, and our memories can be short, but this January was extremely cold, and PJM, you're going to hear me say that name quite a bit. PJM is the regional power grid, a 13-state regional power grid that all of Ohio is a part of. And PJM hit an all-time peak for that grid on all-time winter peak on January 22nd. So as you can see on the right side of this slide, this January's peak was significantly higher than the prior winter peak during Winter Storm Elliott just a couple years ago. And on the left side, you can see the power generation that was running, keeping the grid afloat during this January's peak. And it was almost entirely thermal generation, nuclear, coal, and natural gas. And some good news from this January peak is that we, through Buckeye Power, performed very well. Our generation power plants were working as planned, and because we own all of our power generation, we financially benefited to the tune of about $17 million compared to if we did not own our own power generation, but instead had to rely on the power markets instead. And I'm going to discuss this strategy of owning our own power generation a little bit later when I talk about rate increases for other utilities that Craig alluded to a little bit. So, last year I talked about possible blackouts and brownouts and power shortages. So why didn't we see that this winter? They hit an all-time winter peak. Why didn't we see blackouts? That's a good thing. That's great. So why didn't it happen? The bottom line is the regional grid operators have gotten a little bit better at what they do. For one, PJM was more proactive with the utilities throughout that 13-state grid. All power plants have regularly scheduled outages to do maintenance, and PJM used its authority wisely and ordered basically all the utilities to cancel any planned outages for maintenance work. They also scheduled gas power plants and peaking plants to be up and running during that time, and they cut back on previously scheduled exports or sales of power to other neighboring grids. So they're getting better at that, but still the potential problem exists because it really comes down to the supply, to the demand, things that I talked about last year. And on the demand side, that challenge continues to grow. This year is projected electricity growth in the 13-state regional PJM grid. So the chart's kind of busy, but just focus on the yellow and the blue lines. The light blue line was PJM's 20-year forecast, load forecast, their 20-year forecast last year, and the yellow line is their current forecast for future electric demand. So you can see just in 1 year how much their expectations have increased. And a primary reason for that is data centers, whether it's the digital economy or artificial intelligence, the growth in computing power continues at a rapid pace. Now, time will tell. These are forecasts. It's a 20-year forecast. Time will tell. And, you know, we would get forecasts like this previously for things like electric vehicles. And so far, it hasn't quite taken off the way some of the forecasts have said. But nevertheless, this is what they're projecting. This is what they're planning for. And so this is what we have to consider when we're trying to match up the supply and demand issues. And making things more difficult is that most of the proposed new power generation in the PJM grid is solar, wind, and battery storage. And this chart is the upcoming power supply that's waiting to be built in the PJM grid. Solar's in red, battery storage in green, and wind in light blue. And solar, wind, and battery storage are what's called non-dispatchable. So essentially that means we can't count on that power to be available when we need it. And in addition to that, we expect some of the current dispatchable resources in the PJM grid to continue to be shut down as it has been. 15 or so years ago, Ohio had 21 coal power plants, and now it's down to 4, I think, 4 power plants. So that trend is expected to continue. So the issue is still out there potentially, but at least the grid operators are doing what they can to try to manage through that. We're going to continue to lobby for sensible rules and regulations that Craig alluded to as well. So on electric rates, I'm going to start changing to a couple other topics now, but this first one is very closely related to everything I just talked about. You may have heard about AEP, AES, and other utilities with big rate increases. And a big reason for that is because they no longer generate their own electricity, but instead rely solely on the wholesale power markets. And the power market prices are high and likely going higher due to these capacity constraints that we've been trying to inform you about for the last couple of years. Now, this has not impacted Buckeye Power and Ohio's cooperatives because we own all of our power supply, and so we're less impacted by these power market price swings. So as I mentioned, of every dollar that you send us, about 65 cents goes to Buckeye Power for generation and high voltage transmission. On this chart, this is a rate comparison chart for those two components, generation and transmission. Buckeye Power is called BPI. They're set off to the right side of this chart. The other 4 companies are Ohio's investor-owned utilities, and the ones that are relevant to us would be AEP and AES, which is referred to as Dayton or Day in this chart. The blue part of each bar is the cost to generate electricity, and the orange part is the cost for high voltage transmission. And as you can see, Buckeye Power's cost to generate electricity is about $70 per megawatt hour, or 7 cents per kilowatt hour compared to 9 to 10 cents per kilowatt hour for the other utilities. And including transmission, Buckeye's cost is about 9 cents per kilowatt hour total, everything combined. And the others range from 10.5 cents to 14 cents per kilowatt hour. So again, the difference is largely due to strategy. Buckeye Power's strategy for years has been to own our power supply. Years ago, nobody knew what the future of power generation would be. Nobody could foretell how these markets would develop and evolve. But owning our power generation was always seen as a hedge against an unknown future. And the capacity prices in wholesale markets have skyrocketed, and that really has affected the other utilities, as you can see there. So I would like to recognize and thank folks like Craig Grooms and his team at Buckeye Power for steering this ship through such uncertain times, and then folks like Gary Knapke, who has served on the Buckeye Power Board of Directors and played a crucial role in these extremely important, impactful, and long-term decisions. All right, so changing topics, I'm going to conclude with a highlight of our patronage cash back program. Jim mentioned this a little bit in his report. So as you know, an electric cooperative is customer-owned, and that's not just a slogan, it's a quantifiable fact. One way is from a governance standpoint. Customer-owned means that you can serve on the board of directors, you can run for the board, and you vote. We have events like this. You have that easy access to staff and to the board to help kind of guide and steer the direction of the cooperative. And from a financial perspective, this is the one I wanted to kind of talk about tonight because it's an area that we get a lot of questions on, and sometimes it's unique, so it's sometimes difficult to understand. But from a financial perspective, customer-owned means that you have financial ownership or equity in your cooperative, and we also call this patronage. So you don't just have an electric account with us, you have a patronage account with us. Your electric account tracks how much electricity you use and what your bills and payments have been, and your patronage account tracks how much of the cooperative that you own. And they're closely related. The amount of your patronage or your financial equity in the cooperative is based on how much electricity you use. There's two main parts to the patronage process. There's allocation and there's retirement. For allocation, I've got an example up here. At the end of each year, we look at the cooperative's net margins from that year, and then we assign or allocate the net margins to each individual member based on your individual electric use. So this example up here, it's not actual numbers, it's close, but it's not quite actual. It's just some good round numbers to make it easy for an example purpose. But let's say our total revenue for the year in 2024 was $40 million, and our total expenses was $36 million. So that equals a nice $4 million in year-end net margin. And that $4 million is divided by the top line total revenue of $40 million, gives us a nice, easy 10% margin factor for that year. So then we take that 10% margin factor and apply it to each individual member to determine your share of that $4 million. So in this example, the Smith family conveniently used an even $200 a month every month for 12 months. So $2,400 a year times that 10% means $240 is allocated to the Smith family. The entire $4 million in margins is allocated to all members. Now the Smith's total patronage account may be more than a few $1,000s, depending on how many years they've been on our lines, what their bills have been, and what the cooperative's margins have been over those years. So that's allocation. And then patronage retirement is when we retire your previously allocated patronage, retire it off of our books and pay it back to you. And we typically call this patronage cash back. It's when you get the money back. We do our patronage retirement or cash back in the form of an electric bill credit. And for most members, that patronage cash back can equal a 1 month's electric bill. So what do we do with your patronage dollars between the time of allocation and retirement? Simply, we pay our bills. We're partially funded by loans and debt, and then partially through patronage equity. So your patronage is directly invested in the electric system and helps us maintain and improve power reliability, and then you get it back. And we're currently on a 15-year patronage rotation. This means that the $240 in patronage the Smiths earned in 2024, for example, would be paid back to them in 15 years or 2039 if we're still on a 15-year rotation at that time. It's important to know that that patronage rotation time frame can change depending on the cooperative's financial condition. But it is quite a bit more aggressive, as Jim alluded to, than most electric cooperatives. There's 800 electric cooperatives in the United States, and we share a lot of information to help one another. And this is just one of those pieces of information that we're able to kind of compare ourselves to our peers. And each year varies, but on this chart we see that on average we return to you about 6.5% of our total equity dollars compared to the national co-op average of 2.6%. And here we see that over the course of our entire history, we've returned to our members almost 56% of our total patronage compared to about 30% for the average electric cooperative. So just wanted to try to give a little education on patronage there, since it's a very unique aspect to the electric cooperative business model, and we get a lot of questions on that. So with that, we wanted to open it up for questions. We've got, I think there's a microphone one on each side. We did get one ahead of time, and a lot of these questions usually are for power supply. So Craig, are you ready? Yeah. And the first one here, we got this submitted ahead of time. How much green energy is included in the total generation mix for Midwest Electric?
How much total green, you want to say?
How much green energy?
I would say it's, well, if we include hydropower, which is categorized as green or non-CO2 emitting energy, it's about 4% because we get quite a bit. I think we get 350,000 megawatt hours per year from the hydroelectric facility. So I believe it's probably 4%, I believe, off the top of my head. So the renewables that we have in Ohio, we have 4 very small wind turbines that we have contracts with. It's insignificant outside of the hydroelectric that we receive. We have a few solar panels spread out across the state. Total installed is about 4 megawatts. So if you think of our peak load of 1,900 megawatts, and then you can count on about 20% of 4 megawatts through the year. So it's very small outside of our hydroelectric.
All right, that got us kicked off a little bit. So for questions, we've got a couple microphones going around here, and because of the layout here, we sometimes have to pass the microphone down an aisle or something. If you could just, out of courtesy, just remember to, after you ask your question, pass it back.
Just raise your hand if you've got a question, and Bill Carter and myself will get to you.
Yep. Do we have any? Got one up front, sure.
Hello. So I heard AMP speak at the city council. They provide the power for the city of St. Mary's. And they were also talking about data centers and how that's going to impact, the grid. And so if, for example, a data center, a very large one, would move into Buckeye territory or co-op territory, how would we offset the cost of that? Because they would obviously be consuming a lot of energy, and would Buckeye Power have to buy more energy in that case, or would they be expected to somehow pay more and offset their own costs? How would that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And actually, Craig, if you don't mind taking that, because that's something we're actually addressing now currently at Buckeye with a large load task force. And
Exactly.
so,
Yeah, that's a good question, and we are actually actively working on that right now. We've established a task force to identify the best way to serve these types of loads. The expectation is, and the Buckeye Board has recently made changes to our rate structure to ensure and preserve our existing generation capacity is available to existing members. For data centers and hyperscalers and large loads, those are such a special category. I believe the expectation will be that those members, those large loads would be served from the PJM market. So we operate as part of the power grid. PJM, they control the power grid, but they operate a wholesale market where energy and capacity is available for purchase when needed. We purchase it for members when we need to, and the expectation is that for large loads like that, we would carve out and protect the existing generation, serve those loads from this wholesale market, and those costs would be directly passed through to those large data centers without impacting any other existing co-op member.
Okay. Well, seeing
Any other questions?
Hands? Oh, all right. Another one up front.
Yeah, so with you owning Buckeye Power, owning all of the power generation with only a 4% green energy mix, why are you lobbying for more coal instead of attempting to invest more in green energy? Is there a specific reason?
Well, so we have the coal plant that we own and operate. So we're trying to maintain what we have. So we are interested in affordability and reliability. And we like to invest in those resources that can provide those attributes. Green energy is intermittent, it's dependent on the weather, and for the purposes of maintaining affordability and reliability, there's only so much of that energy that you can include in your resource mix. So we don't have a specific target of what we're trying to achieve. We're focused on maintaining affordability and reliability. And if solar, wind, batteries, and other resources can improve on the metrics of affordability and reliability, we will explore those resources. But otherwise, we're focused on maintaining our existing resources, adding to that as needed.
Matt, I have a question.
Nuclear is starting to show its face up. Are you looking into anything like that on your nuclear parts?
We are hearing a lot about nuclear, and I do believe it's a valuable asset. The timeline to get new nuclear online, at best, I'm going to say it's 10 years. Likely it's 20 years. The two most recent units that were brought online, I think it took about 20 years, and they were expected to cost maybe $9 billion. They ended up costing $30 billion. So there's a lot of regulatory improvements that need to be made. The supply chain doesn't really exist. It's like any new, whether it's technology, it's any new business. Nuclear's not new, but a lot of the developments are somewhat new because we've been dormant for so many decades. It takes time to stand up the business model, the supply chain for new nuclear. And the fact that nuclear is so expensive to build, it's stable, the output is fantastic, the fuel costs are low, the upfront capital costs are enormous. And so it's very difficult for even large utilities to finance and really absorb the cost of a new nuclear unit. So there's a lot of things, you hate to say that you want the government to step in to the industry to help. And I think the DOE, and there may be other grants that people are exploring to help finance the startup of new nuclear, but it's it's getting a lot of attention, it's in the press, but it's going to take some time, and a lot of barriers and hurdles are going to have to come down for it really to become a big part of our resource mix.
Matt, I have another question.
Yeah, I've heard the current administration speak of restarting coal plants. Is there any talk on that, or is that even possible?
Restarting.
Yeah, it's, there's not really any mothballed or dormant coal plants just sitting there waiting to start. It's like any major industrial site. If it stops operating, it degrades quickly. So there are no companies just paying the cost to maintain dormant coal plants. The focus right now is retaining what we have and trying to ensure that those facilities don't shut down. There's a number of them, including our Cardinal Unit 3, that has existing EPA rules that they have to comply with. So there's a number of facilities, of coal facilities, that have the end of 2028 as their end of operation because of EPA rules. So again, the focus is on retaining, trying to lower the barriers to keep those resources online. I don't believe there are any dormant, mothballed coal plants just sitting there waiting to restart.
Is there any concern or undergoing developments towards the power grid's vulnerability to something like a hack by a foreign entity?
Yeah, so we have a Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, we have a North American Electric Reliability Corporation that is responsible for developing and implementing what we call reliability standards. So there's a whole family of reliability standards dedicated to cybersecurity. So it makes things complicated because we are so decentralized and fragmented, but sometimes that's actually a positive, where it's hard to attack any set of facilities, knowing that they're separate from much of the power grid, but it's actually a benefit when it comes to cybersecurity. So there's no foolproof way to do that, but there's a lot of focus. There are legal requirements for utilities to comply with cybersecurity standards to make sure critical facilities are protected. We have standards that we have to follow for our Cardinal plant and for our Moan plant. So again, any kind of standard is not foolproof, but there are high expectations to maintain cybersecurity for critical components of the power grid.
Matt, I have a question here.
Not sure how you measure success in terms of uptime. Might be a chart that shows outages, types of outages, locations, trend lines over years. Not sure if that exists, how you measure that, but also then what is your recommendation on home generators in light of that?
Sure. Yeah, well, from the distribution standpoint, as far as uptime, yeah, we absolutely, we do track that. And we have metrics, a variety, probably about a dozen different metrics that we track in terms of that uptime. And we're able to compare that to our peers and as well as benchmark it against the goals that we have. And our next step in that is breaking it down, not just on a global Midwest system-wide scale, but breaking it down by substation, by feeder, and so we can more accurately pinpoint those locations that maybe need more work than other areas. So yeah, we absolutely track that on a regular basis. Home generators, that's I guess it's more of a personal thing. You just have to do what you think is best for your family, but we do work with a number of contractors, so if you do have any questions, and we provide advice as far as helping people like to properly size your generator. That's important because you could spend more money than you need to if you oversize it or not get a properly sized generator. So we can help people go through that process of at least properly sizing the generator before they do decide to buy one. Okay, well, thanks. Good questions, and thank you, Craig. So at this time, Adam Johnson, our attorney, will come up.
Hello, everyone. My task is to go over the election results, which many of you probably are aware is different this year than every other year. Last year, there was a Code of Regulations amendment that passed that said if no race was contested, that no election would be held. So this year, we had 3 uncontested incumbents. So the following candidates received 15 valid signatures returning their petition to Midwest Electric. For District 1, Auglaize and Shelby counties, we had Steve Bauer. District 3, Van Wert County, we had Kathy Brake. District 4, Mercer and Dark County, we have Jim Weikert. So these 3 directors will serve an additional 3-year term immediately upon affirming their pledge of office. So I invite Steve Bauer, Kathy Brake, and Jim Weikert to come up and take their pledge of office. Please raise your right hands. Will you pledge to provide the members with energy and related services of the highest and most dependable quality at the lowest cost, consistent with sound business principles? If so, please answer, I will.
I will.
Do you pledge to support the policies of the Cooperative and to dedicate yourself to understanding and applying the Cooperative principles to the best of your ability? If so, please answer, I will. Will you pledge to follow the laws of the state of Ohio and of the United States in carrying out your duties as a director on Midwest Electric, Inc.'s behalf? If so, please answer, I will.
I will.
Lastly, the Cooperative has a history of being a good corporate citizen in its community and to the extent possible, consistent with the Cooperative's core mission to seek improvement in the areas of economic, social, educational, environmental, and community development. Will you pledge to give due consideration to these concerns? If so, please answer, I will. Congratulations and thank you.
So we're towards the end of the meeting here. May we have a motion to adjourn? Okay, may we have a second? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now, this concludes this year's annual meeting. Have a wonderful and safe drive home. Have a wonderful evening. Our employees here will now handle the scholarship and door prize drawings, and our board will now adjourn to our reorganizational meeting. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for staying for that meeting. So what we'll do, we'll have a scholarship drawing. We had about 28 candidates show up today. If you don't win that scholarship today, come back next year, the year after. You can still try again. If you've got a scholarship from Midwest already, whether through this process or through the standard yearly process, you can't win again. So just keep that in mind. After the scholarship, we'll have the drawing for the dollars. The top prize is $500 and goes down to $50. There'll be many of those given out. And then we have 5 plants here at the end. We'll do those at the end as well if you like a plant. What's that?
Somebody lost this.
And we still have this umbrella if anybody wants to claim that. Or that'll be the last give out. So we have the scholarship first. Go ahead, shake them up. So if your name gets drawn, please come up. And we got a certificate. And Keisha Schmergy, our customer service manager, will talk to you after this program. And you can talk to her about how to get that scholarship and when. This year's scholarship, I think it's Adam Home or Adam Hone. How? Or how? How? This is your certificate. Keisha will help you get that, so just call me off this.
Stand up here. Yeah, thank you.
All right, now the first prize, we'll start with the 500. And Joel's drawing them out, so you can blame him. First prize, 500, Jeremy Bowersock. Now we're down to 100. Dennis Zahn. Another 100 prize to John Stein. On the right, up in the red shirt. Another 100 prize to Richard Schlarman. Richard Schlarman. No Richard? If I pass you by, yell out. Jody Hamstreet. Jody Hamstreet. Mary Brockman. Brackman. Top left. See her, Chloe? Okay. Still with 100. Dan Dickey. Dan Dickey. Can't do a business. Marvin Heidkamp. I think we found him. Leslie Long. Leslie Long. There we are, top left. We're at $50 now for the rest. Steve Schlarman. Aaron Champ. Aaron Champ. Leo Homan. Leo Homan. Bottom left there, Jim, in the blue. Douglas Cross. There we go. I like that. Sarah Walter. Sarah Walter, center. Dwayne Mexstroth, also center top. Carol Reisen. Carol Reisen. Kathleen Parfait. Kathleen Parfait. Nell Winkin. Nell Winkin. Tom Heaston. Bottom center there. Thomas Busher. Thomas Busher in the orange. Jerome Molenkamp. Jerome Molenkamp. Pam Thomas. Pam Thomas. Lynn Ewing. Lynn Ewing. Benjamin Rife. Benjamin Rife. Oh, back corner. Rob Spees. Robert Bassett. Where was that, Robert? Clem Ralston. Clem Ralston. Darlene Stuck. David Bruns. David Bruns. Couple left of the dollars. Rick Meeks. Rick Meeks. Charles Wenning. Timothy Hearn. In the center there, Julie. This one's handwritten, so Barbara Mulhauser, maybe. Didn't sound like a Barbara. Where are you at again?
Right down there.
Oh, okay. Raise your hand for her. There she is. Okay. Front corner there, Taylor. Larry Heitkamp. Larry Heitkamp. Raise your hand, Larry. Fred Hirschfeld. Fred Hirschfeld. There, back corner there. Well, that was the dollars. We have 5 plants. Your choice of when you get called. Paul Rutschilling. Paul Rutschilling. You want to plant, Paul?
That one?
Tell him to stop.
Which one?
Ryan Brenneman. Ryan Brenneman. Up top, you want to plant? All right. Which one you want? Robert Fullenkamp. Robert Fullenkamp. Oh, here we are. You want to plant?
Flower or the plant?
Flower or the plant, your choice.
That one?
David Wendell. David Wendell. Amanda Shoby. Amanda Shoby. How about Bradley Nail? Nolly Nail. Ronald Steinecker. Ronald Steinecker.
Oh, got him.
Got him? You want to plant, Ronald?
Flower plant. One more.
Last one, maybe. Daniel Klenke. Daniel Klenke. Try again. David Langner. David Langner. Any David?
Nobody? Anybody?
Carol Storer. Carol Storer. Got it? You want that, Carol? Very good. Well, thanks everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed your evening. The food was good.